So we're going to the Crisis Core event. Is it really going to be an event?
Dude, whenever they have Final Fantasy stuff at the Metreon, it's huge. People show up in cosplay. There are nerds everywhere.
This isn't Final Fantasy. It's Final Fantasy 7.
Yo, T-Frog, you haven't been around in SF that long. You were here for like the FF1 and 2 PSP launch party. Who cares about those games? They're like 20 years old. Maybe like FF11 expansion pack. No, dude, this is Final Fantasy 7. You will see like a Yuffie cosplayer having sex with like a Red 13 cosplayer. With
see,
like
I can see that
Sephiroth,
on the internet, man.
Like a transvestite Sephiroth. You're gonna see all sorts of shit you're not ready for.
Okay, tell you what, let's make a deal. If this is a bomb of an event, I'm the man to review Metal Gear Solid 4.
All right, you'll see at least 10 cosplayers and I get to be on that review.
All right.
Let's do it.
What's up, dude? What's up, man? So I'm guessing you've been playing it, Echochrome?
Yes. Yes, I have. And I mean, we have the Japanese version, but everything's in English. So it's
all the menus and everything.
Yeah, the menus in it. Like the voices are in English. It's like the tutorial when they're telling you how to play it. The girl's voice and everything is in English. So it's a very importable game. You go into it and you look at it, it looks like a really rigid puzzle game. Like, I need to rotate exactly here so that he'll do exactly this at this time. It seems something that has a very definite A, B, C, D, you know, kind of solution to it. Turns out it's actually a lot more organic than I thought. It almost feels, except the fact that you don't control the character, it feels a little bit more platformer, a little bit more just get there however you can.
Right.
You know, and people are going to come up with all kinds of solutions for these puzzles.
So how many levels are there? How many puzzles?
A lot. For each letter, there's like 8 puzzles. And I've only got down to L so far, but I'm wondering, and L is the last one on the list, but I'm wondering if I go all the way through L, if it'll then unlock more of the alphabet, because people keep telling me there's like hundreds of puzzles.
I know one of the things that surprised me when I first, got my hands on it is the fact that you don't actually control the character at all.
Yeah.
You can stop him and have him sit there and think for a bit, but you're just controlling the camera and rotating. It's a little unusual to get used to that at first because you're so used to being in direct control of the character. The fact in this mode you're not, you're just controlling the world around him.
There's the solo mode, which is actually my favorite mode, which is just you trying to get to the little shadow images of your character and get back to your starting point to complete the stage.
Right.
And then there's the modes where you'll have 2 white characters and 2 black characters, and the goal is to get the 2 white characters to touch to make a gray character, and to get the 2 black characters to touch to make a gray character, and then to get the 2 gray characters to touch to complete the level.
So teaching us racial harmony via Echochrome.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the Barack Obama of video games.
Yeah, exactly.
In the third mode, the black characters are actually the enemies, and the idea is that you go around the stage, and if you run into them, then it sets you back to a checkpoint kind of thing. And I haven't quite figured out how it determines where to start you when you fall off an edge or when you run into an enemy. It seems a little bit arbitrary. Like sometimes it looks like it starts you back at the last shadow image that you walked over.
Yeah.
And other times it seems to start you back on the ledge that you were previously on. And it seems to have some rules, like it won't put you on a small area that has a jump pad or a hole, but that wasn't true sometimes either.
So, I mean, how's the difficulty ramp up?
Pretty well, predictably. You know, you start out on the A's and the B's, and you're going through them really, you know, only dying once or twice, like never running into the time limit or anything like that. Which, by the way, the time limit, I could understand it if there was like a time attack mode, especially if you were to do leaderboards or something like that.
Sure.
The PSP version, at least, doesn't have a specific time attack mode, and it doesn't seem to have any kind of leaderboard capability. So why do I have a time limit?
Right.
You know, I'm running around this stage. I've been falling off the edge constantly. I've just about got one of the really hard ones figured out, and all of a sudden it goes,
too bad.
I'm like, fuck you, too bad.
So I heard you and Ryan talking about not turning left or only turning left. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, it actually took me a really long time to figure out that your guy only turns left. He's like the opposite of Derek Zoolander. It's like, I was walking around forever, and I think it's the last stage on C difficulty, B or C. He starts out on the top of this square, like walking around the square, and I would line up the levels. You know how if you make one level the same level as another one,
right, the line will disappear.
The line will disappear and he can walk across, but he wouldn't do it. He'd just be going like this. I'm like, what the fuck? Go across the stage. It took me forever, and finally I just skipped it.
Right.
And it wasn't until I had gone through probably 3 or 4 more letters of difficulty, and I was like, oh, he only turns left. And it's one of those things that you would have expected the tutorial to tell you, but it just doesn't.
Right.
I think in some ways, Echochrome's mechanics aren't as solid as perhaps the developers intended. I ran into 3 or 4 bugs actually. One I ran into a lot was where I would fall through one of the holes and I would land on a level, but then my guy would keep going like this, like he's still falling, and he wouldn't walk.
He was just doing a dance for you.
Yeah, exactly. One ledge would look like it's connected to a ledge, the line would disappear to make it look like a solid path.
Right.
And he wouldn't walk across it. He would just walk to the end of this one and turn around and walk the other way. And there'd be other times where like the ledges wouldn't be quite together, it still looked like there was a break there, and he would walk across.
Weird, so it seems kind of arbitrary depending on whether he's going to go across or not.
A little bit, yeah. And sometimes he would like start to walk across, I wouldn't move it, and he would still fall. So it's like, I tried actually trying to manipulate that sometimes, like, oh, well, maybe if I just barely cover this up, I can get him to fall onto this lower level, but I couldn't actually make it happen on purpose. I'm not sure that looking at any media online can really substitute for playing the game and feeling how organic the solutions can actually come about.
Well, that's cool that at least they give people the opportunity to find their own way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's actually going to be a lot less frustrating to people. These puzzles do not have just one solution ever.
In some ways, it kind of reminds me of Portal. I remember the first time, you know, we saw Portal, everyone looked at it and was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. But then once you get your hands on it and learn the mechanics, I mean, eventually, you know, you have some guys going through the entire game in 12 minutes. I can only imagine something similar is going to happen with this.
So yeah, man, I think you should go play it.
Yeah, I think I will. You're going to have to go downstairs, though, because I'm going to turn left to go in here.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm going to have to go all the way down.
Have fun with that, man.
Yeah.
All right, Final Fantasy 7, PlayStation 1. You played it, right? Yep. How many times?
Around 4.
What is your favorite minigame?
favorite mini game, huh? I'd have to say the snowboarding.
Snowboarding. Aha. Aha.
The worst.
No, it's the best.
Yeah, I like the chocobo racing.
The chocobo racing.
Wrong. CPR. That's the right answer.
Second question.
Yes.
Who should Cloud have ended up with? Tifa, Aerith,
Barrett.
Yuffie, or Barrett?
Whoa.
Of course.
Maybe Yuffie.
And the final question, we're trying to get the gold chocobo. Exactly what is the process, step by step, to do that? Two greens.
No, you gotta meet 2 greens to get a green mountain crossing chocobo.
Right?
Chocobos have 6.
That's a good start.
That's step 1.
And then 2 greens again to get a river crossing chocobo, provided that you don't inbreed.
Advent Children sucked or great?
Hard.
How hard did Advent Children suck?
You made the blue river crossing chocobo with the green mountain crossing chocobo to get the black mountain and river crossing chocobo. Then you made the black mountain and river crossing chocobo with a wonderful chocobo, and you'll get a gold chocobo.
Did you need that?
Wow.
And then what
Yeah,
happened?
that's where I go to a game guide for. I do? Okay. Okay.
It's not cosplay. It's time to wrap yourself in it. The other compilation of Final Fantasy VII products, not so good.
I think Dirge of Cerberus squandered a lot of goodwill.
It did. In fact, both you and I, we came to Crisis Core expecting the worst, because before Crisis, Advent Children and Dirge of Cerberus all pretty bad,
Really bad.
really
actually.
bad. And even the first hour of this, it's not the greatest. So I was,
No,
I was a
actually,
little worried.
actually, this game takes about 2 hours to get off the ground because the first hour is all talking. It's all ridiculous cinemas. There's like a part where Zach's talking on the phone, and there's Wutai dudes like 20 feet away shooting at him for half a minute. No one hits him. It's like the A-Team, but worse.
I mean, until you start forging your own materia, it's really not fun to do.
You get the ability to forge materia, and all of a sudden, you can twink the hell out of the game. You can give yourself a cure magic that also like triples your health. You can break your maximum 9999 hit points. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff if you do all the side quests.
I mean, that's really what I started doing once I figured it out, is basically just sitting in that, especially once you could add an item, that third part to it. You just sit there and throw in things and just wait for something to happen. And I got like some offensive spells.
Well, there's a certain system to it, and once you figure it out, like that part of the game becomes really addictive. But really, what caught me up in the game and what really kept me playing was the missions. I only did about a third of them, and that was still like 15 hours of gameplay.
Oh, absolutely.
Right there, just these little tiny bite-sized missions. I did like 100, and it just kept me going and going because there's such great rewards if you follow each mission path to its logical end. And some of them are really funny. Like there's one where you are given missions, actually 2, where you're given missions by a certain Final Fantasy VII character cameo. And so in addition to like nice little gameplay elements, you're also getting some funny story elements that kind of keep you compelled. It's really definitely a game for the fans.
I think what surprised me the most about this game is the tone. Like, it isn't what I expected. It isn't all dark, and it isn't all like super depressed, because you know how it's
It isn't all hysterically over the top either, which is
right.
Advent Children's problem. It wouldn't stop. But this one, like, you get the over-the-top action in the actual gameplay. That's where the action is. And the story is about the characters.
It effectively fleshes it out.
Yes.
And what's cool is you're seeing it, like you said, from an entirely different perspective, where Cloud is this blonde, emo,
He's kind of a
silent
loser.
character. Yeah, and Zack is the exact opposite. He's over-ambitious, he's super energetic, he
very
loves his
earnest.
job, and yeah, it's a great way to
And
put
I
it.
think also the world that it presents here. We were talking about the disconnect when you go back and play 7 now, because the graphics are so weird and the characters look all goofy. This world, it's a little more like between that and what Advent Children presented, and it's kind of like, oh, I can imagine this being a real game world. To see all those places again is cool. Yeah, it felt like good nostalgia.
I think the thing that most impresses me about the game is that we're given a known starting point, we're given a known ending point. Like, we know what's going to happen at the end of the game. Guys, the Titanic sinks, Anakin Skywalker turns into Darth Vader, and Zack dies.
Zack dies. What?
Zack dies. Spoiler alert! It's not about where the game goes, it's how it gets there, and that's what really, I think, makes it so compelling. The thing that disappointed me most about the game is that The missions are nice and bite-sized, but so are the main the main part of the game. It's all very linear.
Yes.
It's all very set along a path, and it's not until the very end of the game when you're kind of ready for it to be over that all of a sudden you get this amazing dungeon. It's huge. It's like the final dungeon of Final Fantasy VIII kind of, in that it's like a hub, and you go off onto all these different directions, and all of a sudden you realize, wow, this could have been a phenomenal, vast adventure game if the whole game had been like this. But no, it's only that one last dungeon.
That's true.
And that's a real disappointment for me, because that's the only time I feel like the game really lets you stretch out, that you really get a chance to just go for it and explore and really have a good time.
But at the same time, I was happy that they looked at it from a portable perspective, the things I could really do on the go, and I found myself doing just 1 or 2 missions on the bus because you really could. And
Right, but that's kind of what the side missions are for. They're for the portable elements, and they work really well in that regard.
So you would've wanted
I wish the main
meatier.
story had been more substantial. And like some of the side quests or side story bits that are part of the main plot, where you're like running around inside the city slums with Aerith and trying to find like lost materia or whatever. Those are kind of fun. You get to move around a little bit. You see familiar places. There's lots of nostalgia there, but at the same time, it's very like point A to point B, and the only recourse is to jump into a side plot and go do a side mission. So that's a little bit disappointing. I think there was more potential there that is really missed.
If you expect a full-on Final Fantasy traditional role-playing game sequel, you will be disappointed. This isn't that, but I think as a compilation of FF7 product, it's better than I expected, and as a portable...
Oh, it's above and beyond as a compilation.
And as a portable action RPG, it's among the best I've played, really, the combat. And audio visuals on PSP, I mean, except for God of War, nothing comes close. Like,
I would say the only Final Fantasy spin-off that beats this is Tactics. Like, nothing else really comes close. You can have your Chocobo games, those are cute and fun, but this actually has some substance to it. It's a good story, it's presented well. The director did a really great job.
Tabata.
Yeah, right. He did a really great job of striking the proper tone. You know, it has a balance of seriousness and earnestness, but also some goofiness. It doesn't take itself too seriously, except when the bad guys start reciting poetry.
a little bit of that.
Would you like a Banora apple?
It comes with the territory, you know. But I do want to give a special shout out to the soundtrack. I think it's really great.
The soundtrack is fantastic.
Because it doesn't just repurpose FF7 stuff, and when it does it really well. But the new stuff fits the tone.
The new stuff is
rocking.
really good. It's a really nice mix of electric rock and also some more subdued acoustic pieces.
Yeah.
There's piano. It all works really well together. I know a lot of people complained. They're like, oh, it's like butt rock. But that's kind of the charm.
It kind of fits.
With a game like this, you kind of got to have some butt rock, and then, you kind of soften up the butt rock with a little acoustic guitar. It's okay.
Exactly.
The battle system is obviously another large departure from Final Fantasy VII. One thing you said in your review, and I 100% agree with you on it, is the fact that the materia system here works very well because you have one character.
Right.
So you actually have that
Materia's
variety.
big problem in Final Fantasy VII is that it made all the characters very generic.
Yes.
But when you have just one character that you're building materia for, all of a sudden it feels like this integral part of the game where you have one character and you're customizing him for each new situation. And there are certain situations where you need specific kinds of materia. And there's some really cool new material, like the Health Byraga, where you cast a magic fire spell at people and you also inflict status ailments for those who survive. Stuff like that's really cool, and it really opens up new strategies and possibilities. Plus, the battle system itself feels a lot like Kingdom Hearts, but good. Instead of just like bashing stuff, you're bashing stuff, and then all of a sudden you realize something's about to attack you, so you evade. And if you're good enough with the battle system, you can make it through really tough battles. You can go up against enemies that are vastly more powerful than you and come out unscathed just because you're so good at evasion.
And the DMW helps quite a bit with that as well.
The baffling DMW.
DMW is a little bit hokey.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it though. I found myself liking the randomness of it, even though I could never really control it.
It's basically a multimedia experience when you're using it.
It's so weird though to be like in the middle of a fight against Ifrit or something, and then all of a sudden, oh hey, here's a flashback to when I was on the beach.
And now
nice.
I killed.
Oh, okay, now I'm more powerful.
Yeah, now we're powerful.
Well, the only thing with that I don't, I mean, the randomness of it is a little jarring because for the first half of the game, I'm like, there has to be a system to this. Maybe blocking at a certain time or
There's
evading.
really not.
But there's not.
There's a little bit of a trick to the DMW, which is fight enemies that are harder than you.
Yes.
The harder the enemies, the more SP, which is basically experience you get. The more SP you get, the more frequently it rolls, and the higher, the better combinations you get. And if you play it right and go up against tough enemies, you'll get special combinations that'll actually double your max hit points.
Yeah.
Yes.
It breaks your hit points, it breaks your SP, it breaks your AP. So you can go through, like I went through the final battle without ever actually going below my max HP.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
I was so powerful. I had like broken hit points that I just totally breezed through the final battle.
See, I was dashing a lot in battles, which was a different thing to do. And you really feel like for the first time in Final Fantasy, well, I can avoid that spell, I can avoid that attack, which is not, you don't think that ever.
Which was my favorite parts about it.
Yeah, it really made it feel like an action game, which I didn't think they could do.
I'm classifying it as an action game. RPG, whatever.
As long as your expectations are like kind of like neutral and you're ready to be surprised by this game, FF7 fans will love it. But if you want FF7 2, this isn't really it.
It's its own thing. It's not really. I mean, story-wise, it's tied to the previous game, but it's free to be its own creation, and I think that's why it works. Because it works as a PSP game, it works as a prequel, it works on a lot of different levels, and that's successful.
That's exactly right. I totally agree. All right.
The short story is I really wanted to play Ninja Gaiden DS. I played it, on various demos as it was being made, and I really loved what they were doing with Control, I thought.
Yeah.
And so I finally got a hold of this review cartridge right here, this giant beast, and it had already been played by several people at the office and had a few games unlocked and finished and completed on it. So when I started playing on hard, and it was great. It took me about, I think the clock says something like 13 hours to finish the whole thing.
Right.
And I felt the difficulty was pretty close to what it was when I played Ninja Gaiden 1 on Xbox on normal difficulty setting.
Was it hard in the same way that Ninja Gaiden's hard, in that you had to learn the depth of the combat?
Yes.
Because
yes, that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
So after I finished the game, I went back and looked at it on normal. I've played about halfway through now, and it's taken, or not quite halfway, about a third of the way through, and it's taken me about an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. The enemies die so fast and do, it seems like fewer attacks, they're less aggressive. You can kind of scribble a little bit more. My tendency as a gamer is to hit buttons really fast. I think people want to button mash. And so when I'm playing a game that I know has deep combat, from the very beginning I try to tell myself discrete moves, like one at a time. I was like, okay, a Zuna drop is horizontal slash, down slash, up slash, and I'm gonna get it every time. Honestly, the control is I think better than any examples that are even close that you've seen that are close to this, like the Zelda.
This is also the way that the DS can compete with the PSP in terms of action games. I think this is as satisfying combat as God of War.
I actually like it slightly more than God of War. It feels like a kind of super simplified version of the other God of Wars. It's lacking in the epic. This is so different from the other one.
This can still maintain the core of what makes Ninja Gaiden great, though, which is the combat. And even though it's very different, it's still equally satisfying and deep.
It has to be on the DS. You couldn't play this on any other system right now. If they try to make this for the Wii, it would be silly and not work quite as well.
One thing I think about the normal difficulty, especially after playing some of the hard one, is at times when it does get frustrating, you can just kind of scribble your way and get past groups of enemies, but the depth of the combat is still there. So it's if you want to, which I did most of the time, is I actually took the time to not scribble and try to do it properly and fight properly.
Totally.
Which I like. But I can also totally see that appreciation of if you're a hardcore Ninja Gaiden fan, you're gonna want that force you to learn the combat.
But you don't have to. Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the DS audience, is they want it to be a little more accessible and want people to be able to still feel that satisfaction and not frustration.
Each of these little encounters when you're playing on hard takes a really, really long time, and you are really having to pay very close attention to every move you make, because every attack that lands on you is deadly.
Yeah, I think I kind of regret playing it on normal now, listening to you say all that, because when I was playing on normal, there would literally be times when I was going through it that I could look away and just scribble on the screen and come back, and I would have killed a couple of guys. It kind of irks me though, now that I think about it, that I can't play on hard. Right off the bat, hearing how different your experience is.
I just wanted to have the choice. The fact that when you start a new game, the only choice that you have is normal is kind of frustrating for me, because I know that if I had experienced the game the first time through playing on normal from what I've played now of normal, I would still love the game and I would think that it's great. But my first time through felt like a complete action game. It was, like I said, about 13 hours long. There was a continuous difficulty curve. And defense was just as important as offense, which on normal, I don't even need to block. I can just scrape through everything.
Yeah, that Nimbo was actually kind of a lame too, because it was like
I would never use it for anything but to heal myself.
Even though there's always been ninja magic, there's never been a healing spell. So I thought it was really funny in this game that number one, they had a healing spell, which again, we're talking about the DS audience and making the game easier and more accessible. So I thought it was interesting that it was in there, number one. I thought it was hilarious that the like character that you draw for the healing spell is like way more complex than the other spells. And it looked, I mean, to me, it was clear that it was meant to be scribbled in. Like the other ones, you could draw the strokes for them and it looks right. But the baby like heal yourself spell is like, scribble it in, get panic time, fill yourself with full health. And you know, I won't lie, I needed that spell to get through on hard. I mean, unless you're using the other magic to solve a puzzle, that will always be the most useful magic in your inventory.
The boss fights also weren't to mention, because they're like, I don't know, they were like super satisfying. The way the camera is positioned, like right behind where you
I did not think the boss fights were satisfying.
Yeah, I think like
they were too easy, at least on normal. Like a couple of the dragons and stuff, I was like, this is a joke. I shoot you with my bow, I roll to dodge your like same attack, you keep repeating, you fall, I kill you.
And they were kind of similar. We were just like in an arena and the boss is really big. But there were like some more interesting
the only
creatures.
Difference between like two of them is like one's an ice dragon, one's a fire dragon. I was like, you did a palette swap.
It's so funny to hear you guys talk about it, because when you play it on hard, if I got hit by anything, I was screwed. I really had to dodge all their attacks. I had to learn their patterns. So yeah, I'm sure that's just another product of the fact that you had to play on.
That's what I'm saying. Now I really want to go back and try it on hard.
I didn't play Black, I didn't play Sigma, so like even after all that time, it was kind of a bummer going back to the same places that I've been, even the basic village.
It's all like old Ninja Gaiden 1 locations that they basically pre-rendered backgrounds from.
But I mean, yeah, the game looks great and it moves really smoothly and all that's nice, and some of the like other offshoot environments you go to later are a little more interesting, but that was a little bit of a disappointment. But in general, I think like taking advantage of the DS and holding it like a book and having your map on the left is just a nice little.
Right, although it kind of seemed like kind of pointless to have the map on a different screen, because the game's so linear that it was almost like you really didn't need a map.
I did glance at it every once in a while, you know, where I'd be walking in some nondescript hallway and I would be like, oh, do I need to go this way, or, you know, and I'm glad that the map is there, you know. Yeah, they could have put something else there, but really, I mean, the star of the show is the touchscreen anyway, which is why it has to be on DS. Because of the vertical orientation, you do get to hold it like a book, which for me, I don't know, like has always bbeen more comfortable than holding it in the standard style.
Did you guys find that like since you played the other one, do you appreciated the story more? Because like for me, the story was just kind of like.
I like the story better. I prefer the comic book storytelling style. I prefer being able to walk up and like interact with a villager and have them speak a couple lines of dialogue that change after every stage, so they keep feeding you, you know, new little tiny chunks of the story. I actually think it comes off better in the DS version than they've ever had in any Ninja Gaiden. My advice to action game fans or Ninja Gaiden fans who are going to buy Ninja Gaiden Dragon Sword, which they all should, because this game is great. Go buy the game. Take it home, and if you got a little brother, you got a friend, make them play through it first on normal, then take the game back from them and play it on hard. And I think having that be your first experience with the game will be outstanding if you're truly a fan.
And you also get more for your money at like 13 hours. 4.5 hours is kind of too short to warrant a purchase in my book.
If you played God of War and you thought, oh, I needed to get a PSP because this is an action game that I won't be able to play if I can't play it on PSP, like, make sure you get this DS game.
I just hope there's other action games like this on DS. Like, I hope that this does spark. I hope it sells well. I hope it sparks a lot of like interesting stuff on DS, because now I want to see like a new universe with this type of combat.
I hope that when Ninja Gaiden 2 comes out for Xbox 360 later this year, that you can change the difficulty setting from the get-go. After I was done playing on hard mode, finished last night, you know, it took me like an hour and a half to beat the final boss because it was so goddamn hard. and my hands were hurting, I realized, like, you know, there's more. I feel more like a ninja now after having beat this game on Ninja, you know, because I'm doing my physical slices by hand than I did after beating the original Ninja Gaiden. This is a game that I want to be challenged when I play it, so let me be challenged.
Xbox 360 lost on me!